The night of the 2026 Grammys is one that will go down in history, but not for the reason you think. It wasn't the dazzling performances, the heartfelt speeches, or even the surprise wins. No, this was a night where two of the biggest names in music, Kendrick Lamar and Lady Gaga, went to war for the most coveted prize of the night, Album of the Year. And trust me, this battle was personal. Fans everywhere knew the stakes were high, but nobody could have predicted the chaos that would unfold. Kendrick Lamar, fresh off his powerful acceptance speech for Best Rap Album, was feeling on top of the world. But behind the scenes, things were far from smooth. Word had already gotten out that Lady Gaga's camp wasn't happy with Kendrick's success. Rumors were swirling that Gaga's team was pulling strings, making deals behind closed doors, and trying to sabotage Kendrick's big night. But here's the kicker. What the world didn't know was just how deep the tension really went. There was a secret history between Kendrick and Gaga that no one saw coming, a past full of personal jabs and heated exchanges. What started as a battle for an award turned into a fight for dominance in the industry. As the night unfolded, the situation only got worse. The Grammy stage became a battleground, with both artists playing their cards in ways that left everyone stunned. Emotions ran high, and what was supposed to be a night of celebration turned into a war zone, with each artist trying to outdo the other in the most unexpected ways. And it's only getting started. The shocking twist that no one saw coming, you won't believe what happens next. Trust me, this story is far from over, and it could change everything for Kendrick and Gaga. As the night went on, the tension between Kendrick Lamar and Lady Gaga became palpable. The air felt heavier, as if the weight of an entire industry was hanging on every word and every glance exchanged. But it wasn't just about the awards anymore, it had become something much deeper. This was no longer a rivalry, it was a clash of titans, and everyone in the room could feel it. Kendrick, having just claimed Best Rap Album for his powerful and introspective Echoes of Silence, had already made his mark. His acceptance speech had been a message, not just to the Grammys, but to the world. He was a voice for the voiceless, a champion for those who had been overlooked. His win was a victory not just for him, but for everyone who resonated with his lyrics, his struggle, and his vision. The fans were ecstatic, the media was buzzing, and Kendrick was living in the moment. But deep down, he knew that Album of the Year was the ultimate prize, and it wasn't just about the music anymore. It was about legacy. It was about power. But Lady Gaga was not about to let him steal the spotlight. From the moment she stepped into that venue, she knew she was in competition with Kendrick. Her album, Midnight Stars, had already been hailed as her comeback masterpiece, blending theatricality with raw emotion in a way only Gaga could pull off. It was her time to shine again, and she wasn't about to let anyone, especially Kendrick, take that from her. Backstage, things were getting more heated by the second. Gaga had just watched Kendrick's win, and while she clapped along with the crowd, there was something in her eyes, a look that said she wasn't happy. She wasn't just clapping for Kendrick's victory. No, she was plotting. Her team had already whispered that Kendrick's win was a result of industry favoritism, that his political approach to music had secured him the Grammy, and Gaga wasn't having it. "I worked my ass off for this," she muttered to her manager, Nick. "This should have been my moment, and now they're giving it to Kendrick? He doesn't even belong in this category. It's a pop award, not a damn protest." Nick, ever the voice of reason, tried to calm her down. "Gaga, you've got Album of the Year next. That's the big one. Let's just take a deep breath and stay focused." But Gaga wasn't listening. She was already thinking about the next move. Kendrick's win didn't just hurt her ego, it threatened her place in the industry. She had spent years rebranding herself, stepping away from the pop superstar image to reinvent herself as an artistic force. But with Kendrick sweeping the rap categories and taking home multiple awards, it seemed like her spotlight was slipping away. "I don't care about the politics. I care about the art," Gaga said through clenched teeth. "We're going to take this fight to the stage." The plan was set in motion. Gaga's team began scrambling, organizing a surprise performance, one that would blow everything else out of the water. But Gaga wasn't just going to perform. She was going to put on a show so electrifying, so unpredictable, that it would eclipse Kendrick's earlier win. Meanwhile, Kendrick was still basking in his win, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He had already heard the rumors. Gaga's team had been talking behind his back, trying to sabotage his momentum. And what stung even more was the fact that the Grammys had always been about more than just music to him. For him, it was about giving voice to the oppressed, to the unheard. He wasn't just in this to win a trophy, he was in it for something bigger. But Gaga, she was in it for the control. And Kendrick wasn't about to let her take it. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a text from his manager, Dre. The message was simple but urgent. Gaga's making moves, be ready. Kendrick's eyes narrowed. He'd been prepared for a fight, but not like this. He knew Gaga would stop at nothing to maintain her position at the top. But this wasn't just about the award. It was about who would control the narrative, who would define the future of music. Kendrick wasn't going to let her rewrite history. The night was far from over, and as the next award approached, the tension between Kendrick and Gaga was about to boil over in a way no one could have predicted. Backstage, Gaga was preparing herself for the performance of a lifetime. She had spent the last several months creating Midnight Stars, an album that was not only a reflection of her growth as an artist, but also a way to reclaim her place as the undisputed queen of pop. But it wasn't just about the music, it was about the message. She wanted to show the world that no one could take her throne, not even Kendrick Lamar. Her eyes were wild with determination as she paced in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing a custom black and gold outfit that was equal parts dramatic and stunning. Her team had spent hours putting together a performance that would not only get people talking, but would cement her as the artist of the night. She wasn't just going to win, she was going to dominate. This is it. We take it all back tonight, Gaga said, her voice low but filled with resolve. Her manager, Nick, stood nearby, watching her carefully. You've got this. But remember, it's not about Kendrick. It's about you. Keep your focus. But Gaga wasn't listening. She was already imagining the crowd's reaction as she took the stage. The lights, the music, the drama, it was all part of her plan to reclaim her spotlight. But what no one knew was that Gaga was about to take it one step further. She had received word that Kendrick's team was spreading rumors that Midnight Stars wasn't worthy of the win, that Gaga was only nominated because of her commercial success and the industry's desire to see her back on top. Let them talk, Gaga whispered to herself. I'm going to show them why I am the best. And just like that, the countdown to her performance began. As Gaga made her way to the stage, the anticipation in the room was electric. The cameras flashed as she stepped into the spotlight, every eye on her as she prepared to steal the show. The lights dimmed, and the music began to pulse, slowly building to a crescendo. The crowd knew something big was coming, and when the first notes of her song rang out, everyone knew it was time for her to make her mark. The stage was bathed in an eerie glow as Gaga took her position, and the audience fell silent. Every eye was fixed on her, waiting for the first note to hit. As she sang, her voice was powerful, piercing through the silence with a raw, emotional intensity. But it wasn't just the music, it was the performance. The way Gaga moved, the way she commanded the stage, it was undeniable. She had always been known for her boldness, her willingness to push the boundaries of art and music. And tonight, she was taking it to a new level. Gaga wasn't just performing, she was dominating. Every step, every note, every gesture felt like it was part of a larger story, one where she would reclaim her throne and show the world that she was still the queen of the game. The performance was electric, and the crowd was eating it up. The camera cut to Kendrick, who was watching from the sidelines. His face was stoic, but his eyes were burning with a mix of respect and rivalry. He knew this was more than just a performance, it was a challenge. As the final note echoed through the arena, the audience erupted into applause. But there was no mistaking it. Gaga had just taken control of the night. The question now was, how would Kendrick respond? Backstage, Kendrick's mind was racing. He had been watching, absorbing every move Gaga made, every word that was said. And he knew he couldn't just let this go. The spotlight was shifting, and Kendrick wasn't about to let Gaga take the crown without a fight. He had earned his moment, and he wasn't about to back down. His manager, Dre, approached him with a worried look on his face. Kendrick, you know what this means, right? She's coming for everything. She's not just competing, she's fighting. Kendrick stood up, his face set in determination. I know, but I'm not going to let her win, not like this. The moment was approaching, the final award of the night. Album of the Year. And neither Kendrick nor Gaga was ready to back down. As the announcer took the stage, the energy in the room was almost unbearable. Fans were on edge, waiting to see who would take home the night's biggest prize. The Grammy lights flashed, and the world held its breath. The envelope was opened. The winner was about to be revealed. Who would reign supreme? Kendrick or Gaga? The battle had only just begun, and the answer could change everything. The tension was palpable as the night of the 2026 Grammys reached its most crucial moment. Everyone in the room, from industry insiders to the millions watching at home, knew that the battle for Album of the Year between Kendrick Lamar and Lady Gaga was more than just about the music. It had become a fight for dominance, for legacy, for the future of their careers. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Kendrick's fans were still buzzing from his victory earlier in the night when he won Best Rap Album for his critically acclaimed Echoes of Silence. His speech had been powerful, touching on themes of struggle, survival, and speaking truth to power. It was a win not just for him, but for the voiceless, for communities who saw their lives reflected in his lyrics. The world was watching Kendrick. He had solidified his place as one of the greatest of his generation. But he knew deep down that Album of the Year was the one that would secure his true legacy. But Lady Gaga wasn't about to let him walk away with that crown. The tension between them wasn't just professional, it was personal. From the moment Kendrick had taken home his award, the whispers backstage had been growing louder. Gaga's team had been seething, claiming that Kendrick was too politically driven to win such an honor, that his message was more important than his music. There were rumors that Gaga's camp had been spreading about Kendrick's album being too niche and too heavy for mainstream appeal, but Gaga wasn't one to keep quiet. She'd already made her statement with her surprise performance, an electrifying display of raw talent and theatrics that had left the crowd in awe. But that wasn't enough. She needed the win. As the final moments of the show drew near, all eyes were on the stage. Gaga's team was backstage, working with the Grammys' producers to make sure everything went off without a hitch. Her plan was set. Her performance had already shaken the industry, but this moment, the moment Album of the Year was announced, was where she would seal the deal. This wasn't just about her comeback. This was her moment to remind everyone that she was not to be overshadowed. She would not let Kendrick's political message outshine her artistry. Backstage, Gaga was pacing in her dressing room, her energy crackling with anticipation. Her stylist, Ava, was nearby, making final adjustments to her outfit, a bold, gold and black ensemble that screamed power and reinvention. Gaga could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins as the seconds ticked down to the announcement. "Are you ready for this?" Ava asked, her voice calm but with a hint of excitement. Gaga didn't answer immediately. She was lost in her thoughts, thinking back to the years she had spent reshaping her image, reinventing her sound. Midnight Stars had been everything she'd worked toward, a return to her artistic roots but with a modern twist. It was her most personal album yet, and she wasn't going to let anyone, especially Kendrick, dismiss her vision. "I was born ready," Gaga said, her voice steely with determination. Meanwhile, Kendrick was feeling the weight of the moment. The Album of the Year Grammy was the pinnacle of his career, but it wasn't just about winning. It was about the message he had worked so hard to communicate through his music. From Good Kid, M.A.A.D. City to Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick had always used his platform to speak on systemic injustice, inequality, and the struggles of his people. Echoes of Silence was no different. If anything, it was even more personal. The album had resonated with fans and critics alike because it didn't shy away from difficult truths. Kendrick wasn't just making music. He was making a statement. He was a voice for the unheard. And that's what made the rivalry with Gaga even more intense. She wasn't just competing for a Grammy. She was competing for control of the narrative, for the title of the most powerful artist in the industry. Gaga had always been the queen of reinvention, pushing boundaries in ways that had redefined pop culture. But Kendrick wasn't one to back down from a challenge, especially not one that felt as personal as this. His wife, Whitney, stood beside him as they waited for the final moments of the night. She could see the tension in his eyes. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. "I'm good," Kendrick said, though his tone was clipped. "I just can't shake this feeling that something's about to happen. She's not going down without a fight." Whitney nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. They both knew that Gaga wasn't going to let Kendrick's political message steal the spotlight. She'd already made her mark with her surprise performance, and now it was time to see if her artistry would outweigh Kendrick's powerful words. The lights dimmed, and the announcer stepped to the microphone. The crowd fell silent in anticipation, and the entire arena seemed to hold its breath. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the announcement of Album of the Year. Kendrick's name had already been called once tonight, and his win for Best Rap Album had left the fans roaring with excitement. But this was the big one. This was the Grammy that separated the legends from the stars. It wasn't just about the music, it was about what these artists represented. Kendrick had become a voice for the disenfranchised, while Gaga was a symbol of resilience and reinvention. Whoever won this award would have the world at their feet. The announcer opened the envelope, and the crowd collectively held its breath. And the winner is, the suspense was unbearable, Kendrick Lamar. The crowd erupted into applause. Kendrick stood up, his face a mixture of pride and disbelief. He had done it, but as he made his way to the stage, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was a coldness in the air that had nothing to do with the celebration. He glanced to his left and saw Lady Gaga, her eyes locked on him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. As he walked up to the stage, Kendrick gave a small smile to the crowd, but his eyes were focused on the task at hand. The moment was here. He was about to claim the highest honor in music, but the stakes were higher than just an award. This was a battle for the future of music, for who would dictate the narrative going forward. He took the microphone, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the night. This win isn't just mine, it's for every person who's been silenced, for every community that's been overlooked. I'm standing here because of them. We rise together. The applause was thunderous, but Kendrick couldn't help but notice Gaga's lack of enthusiasm. She clapped, but it was forced. Cold. She wasn't celebrating. She was watching. Backstage, Gaga was fuming. Her team had been quiet, but she could see them glancing at each other, sensing the tension in the air. She wasn't going to let Kendrick's speech be the final word. No, she would have her moment. She had already planned her next move. The final award of the night was Album of the Year, and she wasn't going to just let Kendrick's victory stand. She had one last ace up her sleeve. Nick, her manager, approached her, concern written across his face. Gaga, don't do anything crazy. We've still got the performance planned. The night's not over. Gaga turned to him, her eyes blazing. It's over when I say it's over. Kendrick may have won tonight, but this is my industry. I'll remind them why. Nick sighed, but there was nothing he could say. Gaga was determined to end the night on her terms. She wasn't just going to settle for second place. Not after all she'd been through to get here. Not after everything she had sacrificed. As Gaga stood in the wings, watching Kendrick finish his acceptance speech, she felt the fire inside her burn brighter. The spotlight had shifted to Kendrick, but she was ready to take it back. The Album of the Year award was about to be presented, and there was no way she was going to let Kendrick walk away with it. Not without a fight. Kendrick finished his speech, and the room went wild with applause. But the real question remained. Would the final award of the night go to Kendrick, or was Lady Gaga about to make her grand return? The room fell silent again as the announcer prepared to reveal the winner of Album of the Year. The moment had arrived, and as the envelope was opened, the world held its breath. The battle between Kendrick and Gaga was about to come to an explosive conclusion. The moment everyone had been waiting for had finally arrived. Album of the Year, the most prestigious award of the night, was about to be handed out. The room, filled with industry giants, stars, and media personalities, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Fans everywhere, from the streets of Compton to the heart of New York City, were glued to their screens. The fight for the Grammy was not just a competition for a shiny trophy. It was a war for cultural dominance. Kendrick Lamar, the voice of a generation, and Lady Gaga, the queen of reinvention, had turned this night into a battle that would define their legacies. Kendrick Lamar had already made his mark by winning Best Rap Album, and his speech about fighting for the unheard had sent shockwaves through the industry. His fans were pumped up, chanting his name, basking in the glow of his victory. It seemed like the night had been his from the start. But as the Album of the Year award loomed, Lady Gaga's presence in the room became more than just a subtle hint, it was a force. She had been biding her time, and now she was ready to unleash everything she had worked for. Backstage, Gaga's manager Nick was pacing back and forth. The tension was too thick to ignore. Her team had spent the entire night preparing for this very moment, and it wasn't just about the performance anymore. Gaga's Midnight Stars album had already received critical acclaim, but she wasn't satisfied with that. She needed the recognition. She needed to show the world that she was still on top. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, where Kendrick stood, still basking in the glory of his win. It wasn't a look of admiration. It was one of calculation. "It's time," Nick whispered to her, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "I know," Gaga replied, her eyes burning with intensity. "They've had their moment. Now it's mine. I earned this." Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar, now holding his Grammy, could feel the weight of the night beginning to set in. The adrenaline from his earlier wins still coursed through him, but there was an unshakable feeling in his chest. He knew Lady Gaga wasn't going to let him walk away with the Album of the Year Grammy without a fight. He'd been hearing whispers about her camp, accusations of manipulation, and behind-the-scenes deals. But none of that mattered to him. What mattered was the art, the message. He had poured his heart and soul into Echoes of Silence, an album that told the story of every marginalized voice, every injustice, and every struggle. But Gaga, she was playing a different game, one where spectacle and reinvention were just as important as the music. As Kendrick made his way back to his seat, the crowd was still buzzing from his speech. But the energy had shifted. He looked up at Gaga, sitting across the room, surrounded by her team. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, there was no mistaking the animosity between them. There was something about the way she looked at him, something cold and calculating. But Kendrick wasn't backing down. He had earned this. He had earned every win, every accolade, and this night was his. Still, there was no denying that something was about to happen. Lady Gaga wasn't just there to take a backseat. She had come for the throne, and the final award was her opportunity to claim it. The announcer's voice boomed, "Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the most coveted award of the evening, Album of the Year." The crowd fell silent. You could hear a pin drop as the room braced itself for the announcement. The camera panned over the faces of the nominees: Kendrick Lamar, with his stoic, determined expression; Lady Gaga, seated with an almost too calm demeanor; and a handful of other artists who had already accepted their fates. It was clear that the Grammy was down to these two forces of nature. The industry had never seen a showdown like this before. And the winner is, the announcer paused, allowing the suspense to build. It felt like an eternity. Kendrick Lamar. The crowd erupted into applause, and Kendrick stood, his face a mixture of pride and disbelief. The cheers were deafening as he walked toward the stage, the weight of the night resting on his shoulders. This was it, the moment that could solidify his legacy. But even as the fans shouted his name, there was no ignoring the look on Lady Gaga's face. Her smile was tight, almost forced, and as she clapped, her eyes never left Kendrick. Kendrick took the stage, his hands trembling slightly as he accepted the trophy. The lights were brighter now, almost blinding, but he knew this was the moment he had worked for. He had earned every inch of it. As he took the microphone, the room fell silent. "This isn't just for me," Kendrick began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This is for every voice that's been silenced, for every person who's been oppressed, for every artist who's been told they're not enough. We rise together." The applause was overwhelming, and Kendrick paused, taking in the moment. But as he looked out into the audience, he could feel Gaga's eyes on him. It wasn't admiration. It was a challenge. She wasn't done yet. Backstage, Gaga's team was preparing for the final moment. They had watched Kendrick's win and his speech with a mixture of awe and frustration. Gaga had worked too hard to let this moment slip through her fingers. She had heard all the whispers, how Kendrick's album had resonated with the industry because of its political message, how his rise had been tied to the movement. But Gaga's album was just as relevant, just as powerful. Her music spoke to the struggle of the individual, to the person who had been forgotten. She wasn't just competing for an award, she was competing for the future of the industry. And she wasn't about to let Kendrick win it all. As Gaga prepared for her next move, her assistant, Allison, approached with a worried expression. "Gaga, are you sure you want to do this? We don't know how this will go over. It might just seem like you're throwing a tantrum." Gaga shot her a cold look. It's not a tantrum, it's a statement. Kendrick might have the momentum now, but I've earned this, and I won't let anyone rewrite my story. Nick stepped in, trying to keep things calm. We've worked all night to make this work. The industry's been talking about how Kendrick's album is more than music, it's about politics. But Gaga, you're not just a pop star, you're art. Let them know who you are. And with that, Gaga's plan went into motion. The cameras flashed as she made her way to the stage, looking every bit the queen she had always portrayed herself as. The crowd was stunned. No one expected this. After Kendrick's speech and the final win, there was supposed to be closure. But Gaga was about to make her grand entrance. As she stood at the edge of the stage, ready to perform, there was no denying the weight of what was happening. Gaga's entrance was as theatrical as it was emotional. Her song, Fire and Ice, began to play, a slow build that grew into a soaring anthem about reclaiming one's power. She sang with a raw intensity that left everyone in the room mesmerized. The lights dimmed as she belted the final chorus, her voice cutting through the atmosphere like a blade. The crowd was captivated. They had never seen Gaga like this before, vulnerable yet powerful. As the song ended, the room fell into stunned silence. Gaga had done it. She had taken control of the stage, sending a powerful message to everyone in the room. But even as the audience erupted into applause, Gaga's eyes were still fixed on Kendrick. She wasn't done yet. The energy in the room shifted. The crowd was still cheering for Gaga, but the dynamic had changed. Kendrick was watching, and he could feel it. Gaga wasn't just there to perform, she was there to compete, to remind the world that she was still the biggest star in the game. And now, with Album of the Year up for grabs, the question wasn't who had won, it was who had lost. As Kendrick returned to his seat, his jaw clenched. The win was his, but Gaga wasn't done. The question now was, could he hold on to his moment, or would Gaga's final performance eclipse everything? The night was far from over. But one thing was clear, this battle had just reached its boiling point. The battle for Album of the Year was far from over. The tension between Kendrick Lamar and Lady Gaga had reached a boiling point. And as the night wore on, it became clear that the final chapter of this drama was yet to be written. The final award of the night, Album of the Year, was hanging in the balance, and the showdown between the two musical titans was about to take an unexpected turn. The crowd was still buzzing from Gaga's breathtaking performance. The way she commanded the stage, her voice soaring with emotional power, had left the entire arena in awe. But while the applause rang out for her, there was something unsettling in the air. Kendrick's win earlier in the night for Best Rap Album had already solidified his place as the frontrunner for Album of the Year. His speech had resonated with millions, emphasizing unity, struggle, and the importance of speaking up for those who were oppressed. But despite the praise, Kendrick knew that Gaga wasn't going to just let him have it. She wasn't finished. In the wings, her manager, Nick, was pacing nervously. He had seen the way Kendrick had accepted his award earlier, calm, cool, collected, but there was an undercurrent of something deeper, something more intense. He had heard the whispers in the industry about Gaga's calculated approach to the night, and he knew that now was her moment to reclaim her position at the top. She couldn't allow Kendrick's influence to overshadow her comeback. Gaga wasn't just competing for an award, she was fighting for her identity as a cultural force, and she wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way, especially not Kendrick. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Nick asked, his voice tense. Gaga, standing at the edge of the stage, didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were focused on the crowd, on the faces of the artists who were about to witness the culmination of her Midnight Stars era. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Everything she had worked for, the reinvention, the personal growth, the risk of shifting genres, had led to this night. "Don't worry about me," Gaga replied, her voice quiet but fierce. "They need to see me. They need to understand that this isn't just about Kendrick's message. This is about me. This is about the art I've created, the passion I've poured into this album. And tonight, I'm taking it all back." Nick nodded, knowing that there was no stopping her now. Gaga wasn't going to back down. That there was no stopping her now. Gaga wasn't going to back down. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but wonder. Would the industry see her for who she truly was, or would they continue to put Kendrick's political power and messages ahead of her artistry? Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar sat in his seat, still holding his Grammy for Best Rap Album, but his mind was miles away. He had already accepted the reality that Album of the Year was his biggest challenge of the night. This wasn't just about an award, it was about how the world would define him. Kendrick had always used his platform to speak out about the injustices faced by marginalized communities. His album Echoes of Silence wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a reflection of the times, a call to action. And he knew that if he walked away with Album of the Year, it would be a victory not just for him, but for every person who had ever felt unheard. But Lady Gaga wasn't going to make it easy. From the moment he stepped on the Grammy stage, he had felt the sharp eyes of her team watching him. They were calculating, ready to pounce. Gaga had already made a move with her stunning performance, but Kendrick wasn't about to let her rewrite the narrative. This battle wasn't just about popularity or public perception. It was about who had the most authentic connection with their fans. As the final award approached, Kendrick leaned back in his seat, trying to stay calm, but inside, he could feel the adrenaline building. He had already won the respect of his peers, but this Album of the Year was the ultimate prize, the one that would define the entire night. And Kendrick was determined to claim it. The lights dimmed, and the familiar voice of the announcer filled the room, signaling the start of the final phase of the night. The crowd hushed, and all eyes turned toward the stage. The air was thick with anticipation. This wasn't just another award being handed out. This was the award. The room seemed to pulse with the collective energy of the audience, each person hanging on to the moment as if it was the defining point of the evening. As the announcer opened the envelope, Kendrick's heart pounded in his chest. Gaga sat just a few rows ahead, her posture stiff and almost regal, though her eyes flicked over to Kendrick once again. Their unspoken rivalry had reached its peak, and now it would all come down to this moment. Who would win the coveted Album of the Year? And the winner is, the announcer paused, letting the tension build, Kendrick Lamar. The applause was immediate, deafening, but there was an edge to it, a strange mix of admiration and disbelief. Kendrick stood, taking in the moment, but there was no time to fully embrace it. His eyes met Gaga's across the room, and her smile, though polite, didn't reach her eyes. There was no joy in her expression, just an air of defiance. As Kendrick walked to the stage, his thoughts flashed back to the countless hours spent writing and recording Echoes of Silence, to the nights spent reflecting on the struggles of his community, to the weight of the words he had put into the album. This wasn't just about a trophy, it was about making sure his voice was heard. This was about showing that the real stories of the streets, of struggle, of survival, were worthy of recognition in a world dominated by commercial hits and glossy images. He reached the microphone, his heart racing, but his voice steady as he took in the room. This was his moment. "Thank you," Kendrick began, his voice calm but powerful. "I want to say this isn't just for me. This is for the people who have been silenced, for the voices that are often ignored, for everyone out there fighting for justice and equality. This award is a reflection of the strength of our communities, and we're just getting started. I'm here because of all of you." The room erupted in applause, and Kendrick's gaze flicked toward Gaga once again. She was still clapping, but this time there was something more behind it, a hint of grudging respect, though it was clear she wasn't done yet. This wasn't the end of the night for her. Backstage, Lady Gaga's manager Nick could see the writing on the wall. The atmosphere had shifted. The crowd had embraced Kendrick's win, but Gaga wasn't backing down. She was already plotting her next move, and Nick could tell that things were about to escalate. "I told you this wouldn't be easy," Nick said quietly, his voice tinged with concern. "I don't care," Gaga responded, her eyes fierce with determination. "I'm not finished yet. He might have the Album of the Year, but I'm about to make sure everyone knows who really runs this industry." Nick raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure about this? We've already made a statement with the performance. You've shown them everything they need to see." But Gaga wasn't listening. She was already moving toward the front of the stage, preparing to make her final act of the night. Her team scrambled behind her, finalizing the details of a surprise announcement. She wasn't going to let this moment slip through her fingers. Tonight was hers, and she was going to take it back. As Gaga approached the stage once again, the room seemed to hold its breath. The final award had been handed out, but the night was far from over. The crowd could feel the energy shift once again. Would Kendrick's victory stand unchallenged, or was Gaga about to flip the script entirely? With one final move, the night's drama was about to reach its ultimate crescendo. As the lights flickered and the music began, one thing was clear. The battle for Album of the Year had taken an unexpected turn, and the true winner of the night was yet to be decided. The drama between Kendrick Lamar and Lady Gaga isn't over, not by a long shot. Tonight, the battle for Album of the Year had us all on the edge of our seats, but what happens next is anyone's guess. From Kendrick's emotional speech to Gaga's explosive performance, this Grammy showdown has become one for the history books. So, who really owns the night? Is it Kendrick, the lyrical genius who's been telling the truth since day one, or Gaga, the queen who's fighting to remind the world who's still at the top? The night might have ended with Kendrick's win, but the tension between these two artists is just getting started. With Gaga plotting her next move, and Kendrick still digesting the weight of it all, we can only imagine what the aftermath will be. But what do you think? Was Kendrick's victory the rightful one? Or did Lady Gaga get robbed in this race for the biggest honor of the night? The Grammy battle may be over, but the real war for the spotlight is just heating up. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think came out on top? Are we about to see more drama unfold between these two? Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more behind-the-scenes tea, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a second of the action. Trust me, you're going to want to stay tuned for the next chapter in this legendary feud. This battle has only begun, and I'll be right here to keep you updated on all the twists and turns. Keep it locked.